Hey guys, so I forged out this blade yesterday out of 80 CRV2. I've now rough ground it. It's been normalized at 1500 degrees 3 times. So now we're going to be quenching it at 1500 degrees and tempering it around 400 degrees. After all of that, we're going to test the edge on different things around the shop. I've got some brass rod, I've got lots of 2x4s, I've got all sorts of stuff we can test this on and see how the edge holds up through that testing. So first thing, I'm going to drill some holes in this thing and get it in the tempering oven. I've got an even heat oven, and we're going to be using the even heat oven to get it to 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. Quench it in some Parks AAA, which is a special quenchant. It's in that tube right there. And then we're going to be putting it in the toaster oven right over there on the shelf at around 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're going to do that for 2 hours. And then we're going to do it again for 2 hours. So we're going to pull it out, let it cool down, and then do it again for 2 more hours. And we're just going to see how the edge holds up. There's a short period of time just after quenching where your blade hasn't hardened up completely. During this time, it's possible to hammer the steel straight and take out small warps and bends. But I would do all this before it reaches below 200 degrees. That's when it seems to start actually hardening. So to get an idea of where we are before tempering, I've actually ground the decarb off of both sides of this blade and off of the edge. You need to do that before testing your hardness. And I've taken one of these Hardness Rockwell testers. This is 65 Rockwell, and it doesn't even touch the blade. Like, it doesn't dig in at all, so we know we're probably above 65 Rockwell. So we're gonna put it in at 400 degrees and see if we can get this down to about 60 or thereabouts. So that should be around 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's close to where we are right now. So we'll go ahead and throw it in there for 2 hours. And then 2 more hours and see where we are. Alright, so we have tempered it. As you can see, it's the next morning. Sun's real low, and we are tempered. Both cycles are done. It's now got kind of a purple tint to it. It should be around 60 Rockwell. So we're gonna see what scratches it. See what file actually digs into it, and then we're going to grind it and test it on a few things like brass rod and some hickory and some hardwoods like that. Digs in. This is 60. Not a whole lot, especially near the edge. So it should be right around 60 Rockwell. So I have basically ground this blade to 0. It's very, very thin on the edge, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a worn out 400 grit belt and I'm going to put a more stout edge on it so that it'll hold up to more abuse, and then I'm going to buff that edge to make it really, really sharp, or strop it. you've heard the word stropping an edge. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to flip that same belt around and put buffing compound on it and run it against the edge to really mirror polish that edge. And that gives us a quick, sharp edge to test. So we can chop some 2x4s, then some hickory, then probably try some brass, and we'll just see where we go from there. And that way we can really test the edge retention on this thing. Okay, y'all, so I have set up a few materials to chop through, and then I'm going to cut some newspaper to just see how the edge does against these various things. Here's what I've got. So these are some things that I found in the shop. So at the lesser end, I know I can go through a 2x4, but this is hickory, so it's a lot harder and should present a little more of a challenge. Then we've got this antler. So this is, I can't remember, some sort of stag antler scrap that I have left over. Antler is actually very hard, so that should present a good test up from the hickory. And then up from there, copper is pretty soft metal, but should present a little bit of a challenge. Brass is actually pretty hard. I'm not sure which one's harder. Brass, bronze, I mean, this has been cold rolled, so some of that's gonna be, this is probably work hardened, to be honest. And then this is silicon bronze, and it has been melted. I'm not sure how hard that is, but it's a metal. And then we have aluminum bronze. So we'll just see how it does against all of these things, and hopefully we don't destroy the knife. We've got the hickory first. We'll just see how it does. I'm mainly focusing on this area of the blade. Put your safety glasses on. Okay, so I didn't expect it to do anything to the edge really, and I don't think it has. So I'm going to cut some newspaper and see what it looks like. And y'all are just gonna have to trust. I'm not sharpening between all of this. You can see I have put a pretty big cut into this right here. Just see how it does. Most of the cutting was happening about right there, so that's where we'll test it. Still cuts pretty nicely. Okay, I honestly did not expect that to have much issue going through that. So obviously if you chop for longer, it's going to dull the blade a little bit more, but I think it does pretty good against the hickory. We're just doing a few chops, and that's what we're going to do on each one of these materials. All right, so next up is this piece of stag. We'll see how this does. Ooh, this is a little more nerve-wracking. Okay, that's all the way through. All right, we are all the way through that material. So this is all that's left of that stag that I can see. The rest of it shot off in other directions. So let's check the edge. So I don't see any defects on the edge. We'll just see how it does against the newspaper now. It still cuts. Still cuts very nicely. All right, so far we have not done anything super out of the ordinary. Hickory and antler are two relatively normal things. Not necessarily normal to cut through, but antler's kind of like bone. So if you're skinning something and you're running up against bones and stuff like that, you don't want it to break, chip, or dull. So far, it's done great with that. I've chopped straight through that antler multiple times. I've chopped that hickory a decent amount to make enough to make a dent in it. And so now we're moving on to the unrealistic portion of this test, which is the metals. Now, I don't think this is a good test for a knife, but it is an interesting test, and I think it will show that steel can be very, very strong. We'll see. Next is the copper. So we've got this little copper rod. We're just gonna see how it does against this now. Ooh, we bent it. All right. That went straight through, no problem. There's one piece. There's the other. All right, we're gonna chop through again. All right. That's twice. 3 times. Now you can see I've got some copper residue on the edge. I don't think I've got any deformities on the edge, but let's check. So I've definitely got some copper, residual copper left on the edge, but there is no deformity, no waviness to the edge. It looks really, really good. All right, we're going straight through the funny papers. No problem. Having no problems cutting through the newspaper. So now let's see if it cuts through hair. All right, this is the spot that we chopped with. All right, no problems. Still shaves. It's a nice hard blade. Got this silicon bronze. I'm just gonna chop through it right there. Yeah, it's 3 whacks on that. Nothing, no deformities there. We're gonna go through that same spot. I don't think we're gonna be chopping through it, but I don't see any damage so far. Keep chopping. Done quite a bit of chopping. Here's the damage that we've done. So all of these are new cuts. That right there, that right there, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. So, and this one's gone pretty deep. So we chopped with this spot right here. So let's see how it does. No problems. I don't see any deformities on the edge, so that's good. No deformations on the edge. All right, so obviously you're not gonna be able to chop through a piece of silicon bronze like this. We did chop into it quite a bit, so here's what the edge looks like right now. This is where I hit the silicon bronze. No deformations on that edge that I can see. Let me know if you can see it, but I can't. It's fairly easily. Yeah. No problems there. Let's see if it shaves. Yeah, pulls up hair. Not the cleanest shave I've ever had, but it definitely shaves. We're gonna put it in that same spot as this right here, where we did the copper earlier. All right, let's see how we do. It doesn't go in very far. Watching as I go, just to see what happens as it happens. Again, this is not very smart. All right, we're definitely starting to see some deformation. I can see the edge starting to roll on me. So you can see right here, it shines differently right on the edge. So it's definitely pretty hard. I'm gonna do it a little further down the blade. Oh, cut deep into the corner there. So let's see how it does against the newspaper. The edge is deflected, but it's probably still decently sharp. All right, so again, we have definitely deflected the edge. That means the edge has slightly warped a little bit because of the strain of trying to chop through some aluminum bronze. But I think it's probably still sharp there. Again, this is a torture test. This is not something you should do to test your knives, but it's interesting to see that it can do it without being destroyed. Yeah, all right. Definitely not as sharp as it was before, but that's straight through the area that I was just chopping with. And it's still cutting newspaper pretty well. It still cuts hair. That's pretty amazing. So it still cuts through hair really nicely. I mean, again, I wouldn't want to be shaving my face with this, but it can still cut hair. That's pretty amazing. So you can see where the deformations are if you look carefully at that edge. See where the light glances off a little differently? Right there and right here. That is deflection. So the edge has deflected in another direction because of the strain of trying to cut through that metal. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You'd rather have that than having your blade break or chip or any of that. So next is this piece of brass. So this brass rod is actually pretty hard, and we're gonna see if we can chop through it. Maybe all the way through. I've already tried with a different knife just to see if it was, you know, what might happen to it, and it did pretty well, but we didn't get all the way through. So let's see what happens. Ooh, look at that. That's a pretty deep cut right there on that first one. Oh, dang, son. All right, we've got some pretty good deflection on there, but I think it's still sharp. It still feels pretty sharp. All right, let's do it one more time, just see what happens. Different spot. All right, we're all the way through twice, gone through brass twice. That was actually pretty difficult. Sheared it straight through. So here is the edge. You can see that it has definitely deflected. If you look at it in just the right light, it's definitely deflected. You've got a lot of that residual. There you go. You can see in that light, there's light glancing off the edge where it's cut through that brass just a little differently. And you can see it's definitely deflected. But I think it's still sharp. No real issues with that. So that is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's see how it cuts. All right, start with the newspaper. Oh, it's not quite cutting through the way it used to. It used to just go through it like it was nothing, but it still cuts through if you hit it just the right way. Yeah, it's still cutting. It's having a hard time getting through some of that paper. But honestly, that is pretty good for having just gone through a solid piece of brass. That is pretty good. I'm happy with that. Here we go. See if this cuts. Afraid I'm gonna cut myself. I don't think it's shaving nearly as well as it did before. But honestly, you can see it's still pulling up some hair. There's still some hair right on the edge there. So you can see it's got hair on it's collected some hair on it. Still shaves after all of that. So to finish making my point, I'm going to chop through this brass rod, the same brass rod, with a knife that my dad got me from Spain. Thank you, Dad, for buying me this knife. I actually love this knife, but it is a more mass manufactured knife. You can tell, it's just by the way it's made, you can tell it's been mass manufactured. It looks good. All the seams on it, there's no like big glue lines or anything like that like you'd see on a lot of mass manufactured knives. This is a pretty good, well-made knife. It's got a hollow grind, nice big edge on it, so it's nice and sturdy. I think that this will probably do okay, but not as well. We'll see. All right, just to make sure we're being fair, it's not dull right now. It cuts through newspaper pretty decently, as you can see, all the way up to about here. So that's where I've been using it. So we're gonna chop back here and just see how it does. All right, we're gonna see how this does. All right, that's one. After just one all the way through, you can see where I hit it. it's got some chips in the edge or some real bad deflections. All right, here we go. One more time. Bring it back to a little further back. All right, that's all the way through. I only did it twice on mine, so only did it twice on this one now. As you can see, there's a rather large deformation in the edge, and so there you go. That just goes to show what a good high carbon steel will do versus something you'll pick up at Walmart or your local store. That's the difference between a handmade knife and a non-handmade knife. All right, this might be silly at this point, sorry, but I don't think it's gonna cut as well. We're just gonna make sure. Yeah, it's snagging on those spots. It's not cutting anymore. Now the other one cut through, wasn't as good after I went through the brass as it was before, but it did cut through. This one, it's having a hard time. So I think I've made my point. Buy handmade knives because they'll last longer. Here they are side by side. This is a non-usable knife now because it is completely dull in two spots right there, which makes it just rather inconvenient. And this still has an edge where it has cut through the brass and cut through bronze and copper and hickory and antler. So I've made my point. Usable knife after going through brass, bronze, copper, stag, and hickory. Not usable knife after going through brass, just brass, 2 times. So there's a point to buying high quality knives. This was a fun test. I'm really happy with the results. So make sure you subscribe if you aren't already. If you like this kind of content, I'm gonna be doing a lot more knife related content, blade smithing, all that kind of stuff. Then make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the alert notification button so you know when I post a video. And if you like this video, which I suppose you did if you're all the way to this point in the video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button as well to let me know. And if you want to see me make a hidden tang handle, click this video here. Thanks so much. See you on the next one. Get wrecked. That is no bueno.